I knew from a very early age that I was different to the other children in my class, different to my brothers. I first noticed my parents correcting my behaviour probably around the age of 3 or 4. And when I was at school, I realised that I was being asked to perform in different ways than was comfortable for me, just to fit in with the rest of the class, in sport, in other activities. As I got older and older, I realised that I was different and I was being brought up in a world that wasn't designed by people like me, for people like me. I'm left-handed and I was brought up in a right-handed world, taught sport to be right-handed, not left-handed, constantly having my behaviour corrected in terms of when I was eating with knives and forks, how I was writing. It wasn't so long ago that left-handed people were persecuted for who they are. Back in the Dark Ages, left-handed people were seen as sinister, subversive, witches, often beaten, tortured, or killed because of their being left-handed. And even in some parts of the world, left-handed people are still persecuted for that very trait. I think it was in the 1950s and 1960s, Barclays Bank refused to hire left-handed people as clerks in case they smudged the paper when they were handwriting statements. It sounds crazy now for left-handed people to be discriminated against for that very trait. But my brain is also wired differently. The gender I was assigned at birth doesn't align with that I feel and experience in my day-to-day life. And I feel there's a level of persecution for my brain being wired differently. In the same way of being left-handed, being dyslexic, being colorblind, being neurodiverse, my brain just doesn't wire the same as everybody else's. So I'd like to talk to you about the impact of anti-trans rhetoric on mental health and well-being, on my mental health and well-being. Every day I wake up and I experience toxicity in the media, on the television. I see the papers. I go on my phone. I get Apple News. I scroll up and there's at least one anti-trans article that I experience just casually browsing the news. I often say inclusion is how you make me feel by how you treat me. For me, inclusion is a feeling. I feel under threat. I feel marginalized. I feel excluded. I feel bullied by the media. I feel bullied by my government. Trans people have become the political football of this decade. The Tory leadership competition, or contest, maybe a competition. It was a race to see who could be the most transphobic. The rhetoric that came out, the debates on television around trans people. Scotland voted and passed the gender recognition reform bill. And the government, our government, blocked that with Section 35. We're now seeing negative press equating trans people as rapists, trans people as sexual predators, trans people as being unworthy. We see this played out in the media, we see it played out around sport, we see it played out around prisons, and we're a threat to women and children. Are we? This rhetoric is aimed at trans women. Largely trans masculine people are ignored or not included in this debate, and non-binary people aren't particularly under threat. This is targeted at trans women simply because our brains are wired differently. I believe that inclusion is holistic, active, and deliberate. I want to be part of our society. I want to feel included. I want my government to represent me, protect me, and allow me to thrive in the society and in my workplace. I feel it's bullying. This bullying is repeated behaviour which is intended to hurt someone either emotionally or physically. I feel bullied. The level of anti-trans rhetoric we're experiencing in today's world has the effect of bullying transgender people. Is this fair? Is it? Who decides if it's bullying? Because often when I'm in the presence of people with gender critical views, I'm told that I am the threat. I am the one that is causing distress to women, to young girls, by invading their spaces, by using my manhood, if you like, my patriarchy, my toxic masculinity to invade and take over their spaces. But I ask you, who is the victim? I maintain that I and trans women are being bullied and marginalized through myths and misinterpretations. I want to be able to trust the environment I live in. I want to be able to trust that I can walk down the street. And we hear the government saying, we want to ensure trans people can survive. We want to ensure trans people can live their lives to the fullest. But how can we do that when we can't trust the government and the environment we live in? That is the impact of the anti-trans rhetoric we see played out day in, day out in the media, on the television, and from our government. I want people to be accountable for this impact. And you may well say the intent is not designed to hurt, but the impact is it does. I want people to start recognizing the hurt, the mental health crisis, the pressure that trans people are facing day in, day out. Trans people face toxic layers in multiple areas, in their family, with their friends, in the workplace, in society, and also in our own minds we internalize. So we think about the family, we think about the emotional and psychological pressure. It's difficult when you change your whole identity, you rearrange who you are, how people perceive you. It's going to have an impact on your parents, on your partners, your spouses, your children, your brothers, your sisters, your siblings. It's going to have emotional changes. Because I recognize that by pivoting my gender identity, put more pressure and more burden on everybody else. And there's a propensity for people around me to want to get me to go back to who I was or not to recognize me. So I feel that pressure. So I often get rejected. In the early stages, I was rejected from my own family unit. There was a level of coercive control. My wife, my children were trying to push me back into my box, making me feel uncomfortable. Again, being bullied. And many trans people experience homelessness. Statistics show that young trans youth, especially Black people or people of colour, are more likely to experience homelessness when they're trans. So what we feel is a lack of belonging. We want to feel belonging in our own families. We feel that I and we are the problem. Friends. I've got friends. I've had friends for 40 or 50 years. And again, what I found was I lost a lot of my network and my support, that psychological environment where I felt safe. Because people turned their backs on me because they didn't get me. They didn't understand me. It was difficult to be around me. Yes, okay, I was going through some mental health challenges myself. Maybe I wasn't the nicest person. But people still found it awkward to be in my presence because they didn't have to talk. There was lack of knowledge, lack of understanding. And they're listening to the media. They're seeing me and being reinforced by what the media says about me. I've got excluded from social occasions. Okay, my network was mainly male-based before. So in some cases, I wanted to be excluded. I didn't really want to take part. But that feeling that I was no longer welcome played on me. I lost that support network. I lost my respect for those around me. I used to have friends who held me in high esteem. I lost all of that respect amongst my peer group. These are things I had to try and rebuild. So lack of friendship, lack of social activities. And we think about those pressures on mental health. If we don't have that support environment from our friends, from our family, no wonder we start to tumble and become less involved and less engaged in society. I lost that sense of belongingness. People were no longer there who could support me. The workplace. Many trans people, and me included, I had my income and prospects at risk. Trans people are still seen as outliers, still seen as hard to employ, risky to employ? What if there's litigation? What if we get it wrong? What if we mess up? It's so much easier not to employ trans people because this is perceived strangeness or awkwardness around us. Yes, I struggled when I first transitioned about 8 years ago. Yes, I struggled. I found it very difficult to engage in the recruitment process. I was misgendered. I was treated as an outsider, and I found it very difficult. So I had this loss of respect for who I was. All this years and years and years of social capital I built up disappeared in an instant. Of course, that I lost that work, social network and friendship network you develop at work. I lost all that. So that psychological safety that is really important to people, I lost it. I knew people were talking about me behind my back. I knew that I wasn't welcome in spaces. So I could no longer bring that whole self to work. And that led to belongingness being taken away from me. I no longer had a place to be me, to be productive and to be able to thrive. Then in society, there's this relentless onslaught in the media that I mentioned already. It is relentless. It's day in, day out. If you're not trans, you're not non-binary, you're probably not aware of how relentless that is. Impact, lack of mental health and mental support, debating my existence, lack of support for the medical professions, waiting lists at gender identity clinics, 4, 5, 6 years for the first appointment. So yes, the government want to stick with the current gender recognition process where we have to see psychiatric support in order to be approved to be able to change our gender. But the barriers to that mean we have to wait long time in the queue for the gender identity clinics. Whilst we're doing that, there's very little support from our own GPs, the medical professionals locally. Getting access to hormones without paying privately or going on the black market is extremely difficult. We need better support. If you're going to put barriers in our way to allow us to change our gender legally, then we need to have those barriers eased through medical support. So through this, I and many others have lost faith in our government. We've lost faith in professional bodies, such as the Equality and Human Rights Commission. We see other governments around the world, Finland, Spain, Ireland, Denmark, all allowing trans people to change their legal gender simpler and without complex and burdensome processes. Even Wales this week has come out in support of Scotland's GRR, gender recognition reform. This is leaving England and the English government isolated in the United Kingdom. We have to fight these myths and misinformation and justify being me. Justify being me every day. Can you imagine that? Turning the television on, reading the news, and seeing something written about you, not involving you. So that lack of belongingness, being in a society that rejects the very essence of who you are and makes you feel excluded or tolerated or made to feel a threat because of stereotypes, because of misinformation that we're experiencing. So I ask you, how can you help to alleviate these changes and make these changes for the better? How can you step up and be allies? How can you make sure that you are speaking up and speaking out and counteracting the myths that you hear in the media every day? But the worst of this is in my own mind. I'm internalizing all of this. Imposter syndrome, limiting beliefs. I am not good enough. I am being told that I am not good enough on a daily basis. I start to internalize homophobia and transphobia, believing the myths, scared to go to the gym in case I'm called out, believing that that's not my space. Every time I go to the toilet, I'm looking over my shoulder, wondering if someone is going to abuse me or attack me. And it's really hard to see a way through this. How can I see a way through this when the constant barrage of misinformation and transphobia is poured over me every day? Let's open the door and this wind is hitting me in the face like I'm on the back of a motorbike with no helmet on. I've got this mental anguish. There's nowhere for me to turn for support, for help, because my government is letting me down. So I ask, how can I feel belongingness in society? I can't even feel a belongingness in my own mind because I reject myself. So how can you help? What can you do? Because we need help. We need good people to step up and speak out. We need active allies. I'd love people to understand what I've just been talking about. Understand the climate, understand the toxicity that is there. I want people to be able to step up and be there and advocate for us, to counteract these myths, to destroy the stereotypes that are being created, and vote for people that will support us in the future. I recognise that not everybody feels equipped because there's a lot of misinformation out there. So how can you educate yourself? How can you find out this information? How can you be the one to take that load and share that burden of education of others? Not just calling it out, but call it in, educate as well. Recognising the support that I need, that others need on a daily basis. In your organisation, whatever your position, recognising how you can reach out to trans, non-binary, gender fluid, or gender diverse people. But I really, really need you to speak up, speak out. I need you to be there for us. Not just today, not just because it's LGBT History Month, not just because it's Trans Awareness Week, not because it's a hashtag for today. I want you to speak up day in, day out. Understand that pressure that I and others feel just by walking out of our front door, by opening our phones or turning on the news. Understand how that makes us feel, how we feel rejected by society, by our family, by our friends, and worst of all, by our government and organisations that are designed to protect us. Create that sense of belongingness. Create an environment where I can thrive. I feel psychologically safe. I can contribute into a world that I want to be a part of, that I can be a part of. I have the same mind that I've always had. You just see me differently. Action changes things. ACT. If you've enjoyed or taken something away from my words, fantastic. So how are you going to act? Be the one. You may not be able to change the world on your own, but you can change yourself and you can influence those around you. My name is Joanne Lockwood. I am an inclusive culture expert and transgender awareness specialist. Thank you very much for listening.